Christine Brown recently had a breakdown on camera that took everyone by surprise. And the jealousy is so raw, so obvious that viewers are utterly taken aback by what happened. In a recently released clip from Sister Wives, Christine admits something that was meant to be kept hidden. She feels like a bad parent because her kids are choosing to live close to Janelle instead of close to her. Let that sink in for a moment. The person who's spent years espousing she's living her best life, who always bragged about her perfect marriage to David Woolley, who moved to Utah to build her ideal life, recently confessed that secretly she seethes with jealousy because her grown children are getting ready to move and traveling to North Carolina to be closer to her old sister wife. This isn't just some offhand comment either. Christine is visibly agitated, her voice cracking as she speaks to the cameras, that every now and then she feels things where she feels Janelle is the better parent because the kids are choosing her. The veneer has completely dropped, and what is left is raw, uncomfortable doubt mixed with resentment that has been building for some unspecified amount of time. For years, Christine built her entire self around being the favorite parent, the one all the children were drawn to, the fun one who didn't keep as many rules. She was the one who stayed home in the house while Janelle held down a job. She was the emotional center of the family, or at least that's what she told herself. But now the basis of that consciously constructed identity is crumbling right before her eyes, and she's having unrest in real time on national television. Peden announced he's moving to North Carolina. Mykelti already made the move months ago. Two of Christine's separate children have basically stated their preference through their actions, and the place they chose isn't anywhere near their mother's Utah base. They're going straight into Janelle's domain, and Christine can't handle it. What makes this moment so much more explosive is the timeline. This jealous affirmation comes right on the heels of her child Peden describing his feelings regarding why he needs to make this move. He just lost his best friend, his brother Garrison, in the most heartbreaking way possible. He's buried under grief, searching for something to fill the large gap that Garrison's death left. And he speaks very clearly of wanting to be close to Janelle because she lost a child and he lost a brother. He wants to be close to Maddie and her kids, close to the family that lives like Garrison's family lives. It's one of the saddest, real moments of the entire season. And Christine's reaction is to recreate it about herself and her memories of feeling lacking. The online universe is very active today, and fans are not holding back. This is the time when public opinion turned fiercely against Christine. And the person who was once the darling child of the Sister Wives fanbase is now facing a verdict. So just what exactly is happening in North Carolina that is causing Christine's children to leave Utah as if it's dangerous? This is not just one child making a life change. This is an entire exodus, and Christine is watching her home disintegrate right before her eyes. Peden just finished his military service and straight away announced he's moving to North Carolina. Mykelti moved there months prior, totally surprising Christine with the resolve. And the telling fact, they're not just randomly choosing North Carolina due to the climate or job opportunities. They're choosing it specifically because that is where Janelle's daughter Maddie lives with her husband Caleb and their kids. This is intentional choice, and Christine is aware of it. Her kids are openly choosing to build their lives in Janelle's orbit rather than hers, and that fact is killing her inside. For one who prided herself on being the mom that everyone wanted to be around, this mass move feels like the ultimate rejection. Christine moved to Utah thinking her kids would follow, thinking they'd want to be part of her new life with David. She's acquired vacation homes, a desirable house, and what she repeatedly calls her best life. But her kids tested out all of that and said, negative appreciation, we'd rather be in North Carolina with Janelle. And here's where it gets even more complex. Christine didn't just lose two kids to this move. She's realizing that the gravity pull she thought she had over her kids was actually an illusion. Peden never truly lived close to her anyway. He was in Street George, not hanging around Christine's place in Lehigh. Mykelti moved incredibly young and only lived close to Christine for a short period after Christine left Kody. And even that was too much for Mykelti to handle. So Christine's role as the parent everyone revolves around was already shaky, but now it's completely broken. What's driving Christine total craziness is that this has nothing to do with distance or logistics. If her kids were moving to North Carolina for careers or contacts, she could be okay with it, but they're moving there to be close to Janelle, and that cuts deeper than anything else ever could. It's not just that they're leaving, it's who they're leaving her for. This, in Christine's mind, is a contest, and Janelle is winning. Each time another kid says they're going to North Carolina, it feels like another protest against Christine. Another confirmation that maybe she wasn't the favored parent after all. And the audience is watching this unfold in utter shock because Christine has invested so much time playing the victim who finally broke free and found happiness. She's been posting social media with photographs of her ideal life with David, talking excitedly about how free and happy she feels. This North Carolina situation, though, is exposing the cracks in that image. You can't say you're living your best life while at the same time you're suffering from meltdown, because your children don't want to live close to you. Those two factors don't add up, and people are paying attention. This is where the story moves from silly jealousy to truly heartbreaking. Because Peyton's insistence that he move to North Carolina has nothing to do with choosing sides or favoring one parent over the other. It has to do with grief so profound that he's desperately grasping for anything that can fill the space left behind by Garrison's death. Peyton and Garrison were not just brothers, they were childhood best friends, never apart in any imaginable way. And when Garrison ended his individual life, Peyton lost the individual who understood him better than anybody else in the world. Those two were always together growing up. They joined the military together, served together, planned their futures together. Kody would refer to them as frigging rad because they operated as one unit. Peyton was Christine's sole male child of 6 children, and Garrison was Janelle's child, just 6 months younger. So of course, these men flocked to one another and became totally inseparable. Garrison was Peyton's brother, his best friend, his coworker, and all that. And now Garrison is gone, and Peyton is totally devastated. Peyton describes in the recent segment exactly why he needs to carry out this relocation, and it's one of the most raw, honest moments ever captured by the show. He explains he lost a big part of himself when Garrison died, and he's trying to find something that no longer exists. He wants to be close to Janelle because she lost a child and he lost a closest friend. And somehow being near her feels like being closer to Garrison. He wants to be around Maddie and her kids, around the family that Garrison was a part of because those are all he has left of his brother. This has nothing to do with Christine, however, she's managing to turn it about herself no matter. Peyton is lost in grief, freely admitting that he's grasping for something to hold on to. And Christine's reaction is to feel rejected and jealous. She is watching her child describe the most painful moment of his life. And rather than merely standing by him, she is caught in turmoil to doubt if she is a good enough parent. It is next to impossible to see because Peyton's agony is so apparent, so real, and Christine's response is tone-deaf and self-centered. What makes this more complicated is that Peyton tried to stay in Arizona close to Flagstaff where Garrison had been living. Garrison had spent a year trying to transfer to the Arizona National Guard, facing bureaucracy and administrative hurdles. And the transfer actually processed just before he died, just before. Peyton knows that Garrison wanted to be in Arizona, wanted to build a life there, but now that Garrison is away, Arizona just goes through empty and sorrowful. So Peyton is doing what his family has always done when faced with emotional hurt. He's moving away from the pain, seeking a place where he can breathe once more. And that place turns out to be close to Janelle in North Carolina. But Christine cannot see beyond her own experience of deficiency to understand what her children really need now. Christine Brown spent decades building an identity around being the favorite parent, and watching that identity fall apart in real time is totally severe. For years, she was the one all the kids looked up to. The fun parent who didn't have a lot of strict rules, the one who stayed behind at home while Janelle went off to work. In Christine's mind, she was the emotional center of the home, the person everyone went to when things got tough. She wasn't just a mom, she was the mom. And that made her all the difference to her, more than anyone presumably ever really understood until now. But here's the piece about identities built on shaky ground. Eventually, they fall apart. And Christine is feeling that breakdown on national television for all those millions of people to see. Her kids are performing choices that totally defy the story she's been telling herself for years. They're not gathering around her Utah home, wanting to be part of her new life. They're breaking up, and worse than that, they're breaking up towards Janelle, the one who never felt like she was the one holding down a job rather than the one nurturing, the one who wasn't as engaged, the one who allegedly wasn't as close to the children. And now those very same children are choosing Janelle's closeness over Christine's. And it's killing her self-concept. Christine always saw Janelle as the working parent, not the nurturing one. That was Christine's role, or at least she thought so. She was the one who performed the daily emotional work, the one who was bodily present, the one who made the home experience home-like. What Christine is understanding now, all too late and all too agonizingly, is that maybe the children didn't see it that way. Maybe they looked up to Janelle just as much. Maybe they felt just as connected to Janelle's home as to Christine's. And possibly, just possibly, Christine wasn't the non-replaceable favorite she thought she was. The cracks in Christine's foundation began to show long before this North Carolina situation blew up. When she decided to move from Las Vegas to Flagstaff, she left Aspen and Mitch behind with little consideration. Aspen had just married. Mitch had literally just moved to Las Vegas to be close to the family, and Christine planned and left anyway. Peyton never really lived with his complete time. He was in street. George carrying out his own thing. McKelty moved young and kept to herself. So this idea that Christine was the mom everyone orbited around was already a fiction, but she kept up anyway because it was the sole identity she had left after leaving Kody. Now that fiction is breaking down, and Christine doesn't know who she is without it. If she's not the favored parent, if she's not the person that everybody needs and wants, thereby, what is she? That question is killing her on the inside. And rather than performing the hard task of creating a new identity, she's lashing out at Janelle and making her children feel guilty for feeling their own lives. It's complicated, it's uncomfortable, and it's only going to get worse from here. We need to address the glaring problem in the space that no one wants to admit: David Woolley. Christine has been glorifying him non-stop since they came together, playing it as if he's the answer to all her religious prayers and the proof that leaving Kody was the right decision. But for her kids, David's entrance created chaos, disruption, and a great deal of awkward change that Christine either fails to notice or refuses to accept. And that is a big part of why her kids are leaving to go to North Carolina rather than staying around Utah to be part of her new chapter. Christine and David's relationship went forward at lightning speed. They met, experienced attraction, got engaged, and married so fast that some of her children were unable to keep up with the speedy evolution. To children who had just witnessed their parents' polygamous marriage end after decades, seeing their parent enter another marriage just about as soon as the previous one ended was unsettling. Pedon explicitly expressed it clear early on through social media that he does not accept David as a stepfather. He placed it there on TikTok so everyone could see. Whether he still holds that stance now is unclear, but the fact that he felt it strongly enough to express it out loud speaks volumes about what you need to know in order to understand how comfortable he was with this new reality. And it's not all about David himself. David comes along with 8 kids of his own, so suddenly Christine's kids were having to adapt to merging families with an entire group of new step-siblings. That is not an easy change. That is a whole reformation of family dynamics. And for kids who were already going through upheaval from their parents' breakup and trying to deal with the destruction of their home falling apart, this was too much too fast. Christine was so busy in her own happiness that she never stopped to consider if her children were ready for this amount of change. Now contrast that to Janelle's situation. Janelle does not have a new partner. She's not bringing new people into the family dynamics or asking her children to welcome step-siblings or adapt to someone new sharing space in their parents' life. When Peden goes to North Carolina to be close to Janelle, it's just Janelle. It's Maddie and Caleb, people he already knows and respects. It's known, it's stable, it's expected. There is no chaos, no rapid-fire changes, no need to embrace a new dad or become attached to strangers. It's just home, the home he's always known. And that's just what he needs right now. As he's sorting through the loss of Garrison, Christine continues talking about how great her life is with David, how happy she is, how this is all she's ever wanted. But her kids analyzed that life and said negative appreciation. They don't want the chaos disruption. They don't want the mixed household mayhem. They want stability and peace. And they're finding it with Janelle, not with Christine. And Christine is so busy in her own story that she is unable to see how her choices repelled her children. This is what makes Christine's jealous meltdown even harder to witness. Janelle has been in this exact situation before, and her response was quite another thing. When Janelle's children, most notably Garrison and Gabriel, were drawn to Christine and openly discussing how much they love spending time with her, Janelle never complained. She never had a public meltdown over feeling like an unsatisfactory parent. She never turned it into a competition and acted like her children choosing Christine somehow was a personal affront to her. Instead, Janelle rejoiced at the fact that her children shared such a deep attachment with their other mom. Janelle constantly pointed out how much Christine meant to her boys. She spoke about how grateful she was that her children had Christine in their lives, how wonderful it was that they got to feel so attached to her. When Garrison and Gabriel spoke that they wanted to feel holidays with Christine, that they'd continue wherever Christine continued, Janelle didn't feel chaos into doubt. She didn't perform acerbic comments or feel threatened. She genuinely seemed happy that her children had that bond, and she believed Christine's impact on her kids That's what co-parenting in a polygamous marriage is supposed to look like, at least based on the ideals they all profess to embrace. But now things have been turned around, and Christine's reaction is far from so generous. Rather than celebrating the fact that her children have this intense bond with Janelle, rather than being thankful that Kody gets to have secure and supported going on to North Carolina, Christine is turning it all into her own experiences of inadequacy. She's publicly stating she feels like Janelle is a better parent because the kids are choosing her. She's looking at this as a competition with winners and losers, and in her mind, she's feeling like a loser badly. What is even more telling is what didn't happen way back when Garrison and Gabriel wanted to spend holidays with Christine. They said they wanted to be with her on Thanksgiving, said they'd follow her wherever she went, but those combined family holidays never really happened. Even though the men professed their wish to be together, even though everyone allegedly wanted to maintain family bonds after separation, Christine and Janelle never succeeded in arranging for everyone together. So, the male declared preference for Christine did not really make it to action. Yet Christine still enjoyed learning that her stepchildren wished to rotate around her. Presently, her own biological children are showing a preference to be around Janelle, and Christine cannot show the same grace that Janelle showed her. Rather, she's having a public meltdown and making passive-aggressive comments about Janelle needing to stop speaking about having all the descendants in the area. The double standard is obvious, and the audience is surely not missing it. Janelle handled this situation with maturity and genuine satisfaction for her children's relationships. Christine is handling it with jealousy, bitterness, and an hysterical need to make herself the victim. The contrast couldn't be worse, and it's not helping Christine one bit. There is a darker nuance to this story that reveals why Christine's kids may be staying away, and it has everything it needs to carry out with the pressure she put upon them building. Mykelti has been very open on her Patreon to the difficulties she and Aspen faced being Christine's older daughters and what she's referred to as textbook parentification. These women weren't just daughters. However, they were compelled to be emotional support systems for their parent, pseudo-parents to their younger sister, and middle people in domestic disputes. That is not a normal parent-child relationship, and it left deep scars. Mykelti has gone at length in explaining how she and Aspen felt a lot of pressure not just to be kids, but to essentially act as extra parents within the house. They needed to help raise their little siblings because Christine could not do it all on her own in a plural marriage where Kody kept switching between houses. But even worse than that, they needed to be Christine's emotional support. When Christine was in need, when she needed comfort, when she needed someone to rely on, she went to her daughters rather than taking care of her own feelings like an adult. That's a total function reversal, and it disrupted these women's consciousnesses. Children are not meant to parent their parents. They're not meant to be accountable for their parents' emotional well-being. But in polygamy, parentification occurs on a permanent basis, since the arrangement creates chaos. Children assume finishing raising their siblings, since there are too many children and too little parental attention. Children assume mediating between sister wives or between their parents and their father. Children assume being their parents' confidant and therapist, since the adult figures in their lives are too busy managing the complexities of plural marriage to actually parent well. For Mykelti and Aspen, that was about putting their own lives on hold to be what Christine needed them to be. That was about giving up their own emotional growth in order to help their parents' tenuous mental stability. That was about living as if they couldn't leave, couldn't follow their own dreams, couldn't just be young people carving out their lives because their parent needed them too much. And that's exhausting. That's suffocating. That's the kind of dynamic that makes older children want to set hard boundaries and physical distance when they finally have the freedom to do so. So when Mykelti moved to North Carolina, it wasn't necessarily about being close to Maddie or distant from Christine. It was about getting out of a dynamic that had been toxic for years. It was about finally getting to just be a daughter and not her parents' parent. And Christine's response to Mykelti leaving was said not to be remarkable, which solely confirmed Mykelti's resolve. Christine turned it around about herself, made Mykelti feel guilty, and couldn't see that her daughter desperately needed space to breathe and create her own identity outside of being Christine's emotional support. Kody is currently chasing Mykelti to North Carolina, and Christine still doesn't get it. She's still making it all about her experiences, still placing pressure on her children, still can't seem to see that her behavior is exactly what's making them leave. The online community is completely turning on Christine Brown right now, and the change of public opinion is stunning. If you go to the Sister Wives subreddit, the place that was formerly Christine's biggest fan base, you'll find comment after comment from people speaking "they're done with her," calling her behavior unbearable and wondering what happened to the person they once rallied behind. This is the same group of people who cried when Christine left Kody, that supported her when she found David, that came to her defense against any kind of criticism. But now those same viewers are drained and they're not staying silent about it. People are pointing out Christine for changing everything around her, while her children are clearly drowning in grief. They're pointing out the hypocrisy of her living her best life at the same time as having envious meltdowns about where her grown children choose to live. They're complaining about the stress she's putting on her kids, the way she's causing them to feel guilty for making decisions that have nothing to do with her. And they're particularly annoyed about the timing, the fact that it's all going on during a time when the family is still reeling from Garrison's death. The publicity is bad, and the audience is not holding back. What's interesting is how quickly this turning point happened. Just months ago, Christine could do nothing wrong according to the vision of Sister Wives fans. She was the brave one who broke free. She was the one who finally stood up for herself. She was living proof that you could leave a bad situation and find happiness on the other side. But now that story is falling apart because her actions do not match her words. You cannot keep posting about how great your life is and then turn around and grumble that your kids don't want to be part of it. You cannot speak about happiness and freedom and then show jealousy and doubt every time the cameras work. Audience are also recognizing the way Christine treated Kody when she first moved to North Carolina. News and articles on social media indicate that Christine did not handle Kody's leaving well, that she made her daughter feel guilty for choosing to leave. And now that Pedon is doing the same thing, Christine is following through with the same pattern. She's making it all about her hurt experiences, rather than understanding that her grown kids have every right to build their lives where they choose. People are seeing this behavior and calling it what it is: controlling, manipulative, and deeply insecure. The word that keeps recurring in these audience forums is insufferable. People are saying they once had respect for Christine, but now they can no longer abide watching her segments. They're saying her constant bragging about David has become annoying. They're saying her jealousy of Janelle is distasteful and unnecessary. They're telling us they're feeling Christine fatigue and they need a break from her victim syndrome. This is a soap opera fall from grace, and it's happening in real time, with more shows airing and more of Christine's true experiences coming to light. The viewer favorite once was now becoming the villain, and she doesn't even seem to realize it's happening. Just when you think Christine's jealousy couldn't get any more transparent, she lets loose with a comment that unveils exactly how deep this rivalry with Janelle actually goes. In the very same episode that she's having meltdown over her children moving to North Carolina, Christine delivers a snide comment about Janelle needing to stop talking about having all the progeny close. Let that news sink in for a moment. Christine is so envious that she cannot even let Janelle have the reality that her descendants are nearby without turning it into an attack on her personally. This isn't all about grown children any longer. Now it's been blown up to descendants. And Christine is looking at every individual household link as a scoreboard where one wins and one loses. Janelle has Maddie and her kids in North Carolina. She gets to see them every day, be part of their everyday lives, watch them grow, and instead of being happy for Janelle, instead of understanding that this is one of the highlights of Janelle's life since losing Garrison, Christine is resentful. She's keeping score, tabulating who has more offspring around, who gets more visits, who the family is revolving around. It's foolish, it's distasteful, and it's exactly the kind of behavior that led people to leave polygamy in the first place. What makes this descendants conflict even more absurd is that Christine chose to move to Utah expressly so that she would have her individual descendants nearby. She's gotten her vacation property set up in part because she wanted family close at hand. She made a deliberate choice regarding where to build her life based on closeness to her kids and grandchildren. But now that some of her children are making different choices, now that they're choosing closeness to Janelle and Maddie's kids instead, Christine can't handle it. She made her choice, but she's outraged that her kids aren't making the same one. The irony hurts. Christine spent years in a plural marriage in which competition and jealousy among the sister spouses ruined everything. She left that marriage precisely to get away from that poison, to find peace and happiness without always comparing herself to others. Yet here she is years later, still trapped in that same competitive frame of mind. She's still determining her worth by whether or not she's winning or losing some fantasy contest. She's still keeping score, she's still letting envy control her responses. Leaving Kody didn't fix the problem, because the problem was never ever just Kody. The problem is the way Christine sees relationships as competitions, where there has to be a winner. And the worst part of all this is the timing. Janelle just lost her children. She's dealing with grief that most people can't even begin to understand. Her family building around her, her children close at hand. That's not some strategic win she's winning. That's making it through. That's finding little pockets of light in the blackest stretch of her life. But Christine can't see beyond her own doubt enough to see that. Instead, she's taking Janelle's grief over her own moments of inadequacy. And that's a degree of narcissism that's hard to forgive. McKelty published a revelation on Patreon of late that shows exactly how tenuous the bond among Christine and Janelle actually is. She conveyed that Christine and Janelle would not be friends if they hadn't been sister spouses. They are too different. They have completely different personalities, different values, different ways of living, different moral compasses, different goals. They're essentially incompatible as friends, and the sole aspect that ever tied them together as a unit was their mutual tie to Kody and their devotion to plural marriage. Now that those two aspects no longer exist, what's actually holding them together? The answer is looking more and more like nothing. This realization puts everything into context. Christine and Janelle maintained a workable relationship for decades because they needed to. They were sister wives, they had a shared husband, they were bringing up their kids together in shared homes. But take away that framework, take away the responsibility, and what you're left with is two people who don't really respect each other much. They put up with each other. They did nice for the cameras and for the kids. But real companionship, deep respect for one another, that was never really there, and it's painfully clear now. The fractures were always there if you looked close enough. Christine was always competitive with the other wives. She needed to be the favored, needed to be the most admired, needed to capture Kody's attention and love. Janelle was calmer, less emotionally reactive, more concerned about practical issues than emotional drama. Those differences worked when they had delineated roles within the plural marriage institution. Though, there is no framework, there is no common purpose. There is merely two people who happen to have history and children, and that clearly isn't enough to maintain a real connection. And Garrison's death is putting to the test whatever tenuous connection they have left. Mourning enacts bizarre behavior on people. It makes them irrational, emotional, erratic. It lays unfiltered wounds bare and strips away pretense. For Janelle, grief equates to keeping her remaining kids close and finding solace in her children. For Christine, grief seems to be taking the form of jealousy and confusion, a resentment of Janelle for being the person the kids are drawing towards now. Rather than bringing them together in common grief, Garrison's death could be the thing that finally tears what little was left between them apart. So, where does this family go from here? Can Christine and Janelle maintain even a friendly relationship when Christine is openly resentful and Janelle is quietly bereaved? Will the children continue to keep their distance from Christine as her behavior becomes increasingly controlling and guilt-driven? Will Christine ever understand that her envy is driving people away? Or will she keep blaming everyone else for failing to choose her? And most importantly, will this family find any way to heal from the trauma of Garrison's death? Or will this be the ultimate split that tears them apart for good? The answers to those questions are unfolding right before us in real time, and the viewers are watching with a mixture of sadness and anger. This family weathered decades of plural marriage dysfunction, but they may not weather the wake of leaving it behind. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel Soul Sister Wives because the next video is coming and you won't believe what's coming next.